After a poorly received third season of The Mandalorian, it looks like we're already seeing a narrative shift coming out of Lucasfilm, indicating that they might actually be going back to having the show be focused on Din Djarin rather than on Katee Sackhoff's Bo-Katan Kryze. This is coming from Katee Sackhoff herself. Before we get into the story, I'd like to ask if you could please hit that subscribe button and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any videos in the future. But let's get to this story here. This is over on thatparkplace.com. Katee Sackhoff declares The Mandalorian is Din Djarin's show, despite EP Rick Famuyiwa admitting Bo-Katan Kryze was The Mandalorian. So we had this interview from Katee Sackhoff with The Direct where she indicated that she did not have any discussions with Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni about the show shifting focus from Din Djarin to Bo-Katan for season 3. She said, no, I think there's always going to be a lot of speculation in this fandom. I think it's one of the reasons why people love this fandom so much. And they love this universe so much that a lot of times it allows just enough ambiguity for people to interpret things the way they want to interpret them. And out of that, there is the ability to have a lot of misinformation get out or just, wishful thinking. Well, as I'll show you later in this video, it's not about fan interpretation. It's about what Rick Famuyiwa specifically said. And it's also about what people saw on the screens themselves during The Mandalorian season 3. I mean, you had a symbolic passing of the Darksaber from Din Djarin to, it wasn't even symbolic. He literally gave it to her. Din Djarin gave the Darksaber to Bo-Katan Kryze, saying, hey, you are now the Mandalorian. And we had Rick Famuyiwa say it in an episode breaking down The Mandalorian season 3. So it's not about speculation. It's not about rumors. It's not about misinformation. It's about this is what they showed us in the television show, and this is what they said breaking down the television show. So I'm gonna push back on Katee Sackhoff right there. As trying to put blame on the fans for misinterpreting this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Nevertheless, she went on and said, and I think in this situation, I think that the story of the Mandalorians and the story of Bo-Katan needed to be told. I don't believe in any way that it was taking away from Din Djarin's story, nor was that ever the intention. I definitely going to disagree with that as well. I definitely think that it did indeed take away from Din Djarin's story. He was basically sidelined for the entire season 3, didn't really play a big role at all, and instead the focus was more on Bo-Katan Kryze. Then she goes on and says that The Mandalorian is still about Din Djarin. She says, and Pedro and I aren't in charge of who gets to lead the show. This is Din Djarin's show. It will always be Din Djarin's show. So I think that is a huge narrative shift from what we saw throughout the entire season 3, that maybe they are going to be going back to having Din Djarin be the focus of The Mandalorian moving forward. And I think there is some hope that is the case after how they concluded the show. We did kind of see him being offered bounties to work for the New Republic, and he would be going out and hunting kind of with Grogu. That seemed to be the implication there. But it also left it open that we might see some stuff with Bo-Katan Kryze moving forward, dealing with rebuilding Mandalore and the Mandalorian people. But let's go to what Rick Famuyiwa had previously said about The Mandalorian. Famuyiwa made an appearance at Star Wars Celebration back in April where he played coy with the idea of shifting the show from Din Djarin to Bo-Katan Kryze. Screen Rant reported that he said this, I think now with Bo possessing the Darksaber, I know that there was a lot of expectations that might have shifted both in terms of what it meant for Din Djarin, but also for Bo and what does it mean? Who is the Mandalorian at this point? And so I think it could be anyone. And I think that's what they're trying to define in many ways is what does that mean to be Mandalorian? So he's clearly questioning like who really is the Mandalorian? Is it Bo-Katan Kryze? Is it Din Djarin? Well, it looks like it could be Bo-Katan Kryze because she now has the Darksaber, very clearly implying that the torch had been passed to Bo-Katan Kryze from Din Djarin. However, in another interview at Star Wars Celebration, he did say the show was still about Din Djarin, and Grogu said, I think at the end of it, it's always been about this core relationship with Din Djarin and Grogu, and I think we have just been trying to service that story, the story of this reluctant father figure and his child. And where that adventure has taken us has sort of pushed the show and pushed the boundaries of the show as that relationship has grown, and Din Djarin has been on this journey to sort of do right by these decisions he's made. It sort of forced us and put us in a position of having to make the show bigger, and that's taken us to different places. He then concluded saying, and this season is certainly a big example of that because now it ain't just one Mando, it's a lot of Mandos, and there's a mommy, referring to Katee Sackhoff's Bo-Katan Kryze. However, As part of the third season of Disney Gallery Star Wars The Mandalorian, Famuyiwa detailed that Bo-Katan Kryze had become the titular character. This is what he said. Bo, in many respects, this season is also the Mandalorian. There you go. Front and center is also the Mandalorian. She has become the titular character because it's so much about her story and her journey and her sort of initial ideas of going back and bringing her people back together that got derailed after she lost the dark saber. So I think that's very clear that he's talking about that the show is about her story, her ideas, and her journey. Jon Favreau would also add she earned her stripes and adventures that we've all seen from nobility, and she's been part of Death Watch. She's existed in many different contexts, and she's also a character where there's room for development. So not as much clear from Favreau, but I think it's very clear from Rick Famuyiwa. And then, as I stated, it's unclear whether or not the show will actually be Din Djarin's story moving forward. There is that hint we saw at the end of the episode where he's kind of taking on bounties that the New Republic is giving him to kind of hunt down Imperials. But then there's also the idea that Bo-Katan was just given the torch to lead the Mandalorian people by the armor, and we can see stories about that. So it's really unclear where they're going to go with it, but it does look like we are seeing a narrative shift from Katee Sackhoff saying that maybe they are going to be focusing on Din Djarin moving forward in season 4. But let me know what you guys think about what Katee Sackhoff had to say here. What are your expectations for The Mandalorian season 4?